Good morning. Welcome to NewsWire on SportsGrid. I'm Craig Mish. Today is Monday after the NFL regular season concludes. We've got a lot to go, of course, in the NFL playoffs. We've got a big game tonight. It's the college football championship, so we'll have a preview of that as well. Matthew Waters will join us of Legal Sports Report, Matt Lutovsky from the Sporting News, and of course, Warren Sharp will weigh in on everything that we saw in Week 18 and how we move forward in the NFL playoffs as well. But naturally, it wouldn't be a Monday after the regular season ended without a lot of changes going on in the NFL. And certainly we're going to see a lot more today. But as of now, there have been major changes happening in the National Football League as far as coaches are concerned. So let's get right to it. Late last night, after the game ended between Miami and Buffalo, the Falcons announced that they have fired Arthur Smith after 3 seasons as head coach. 7-10, 7-10, and 7-10 was not the expectation for the Falcons when they brought him away from the Tennessee Titans, but Arthur Smith no longer the head coach of the Atlanta Falcons. So that was late last night, early this morning. And speaking of which, about an hour ago, Ron Rivera was told that he is no longer the head coach of the Washington Commanders. He was 26-49-1 as head coach there. And remember, they changed the name of the team and changed ownership. So not a big surprise that a lot of changes going on. But how about this? Former Warriors GM Bob Myers and former Vikings general manager Rick Spielman are going to assist the Commanders as they look for a new head coach. And they also look for people to run the operation there and football operation. So it certainly will be interesting. They've already requested interviews, which we will get to here in a second. But also one other move, the Carolina Panthers, who appear to have made the worst trade in the NFL last year, have fired general manager Scott Fitterer. Of course, Fitterer responsible for drafting Bryce Young and trading DJ Moore and moving up and doing all those things. So naturally, at this point, those are the 3 things that we know as far as people who are on the outs in the National Football League. Now, here is some possibilities for the Washington Commanders as they've already requested interviews for head coaches. They want to speak to offensive coordinator of the Lions, Ben Johnson, who, of course, is getting ready for a Monday Night Football game, Aaron Glenn as well. The Commanders also requested permission to speak to defensive coordinator Raheem Morris, former head coach in the NFL, and also want to speak to the assistant general manager of the Chicago Bears. His name is Ian Cunningham. And so their executive search and their coaching search is already underway. And make no mistake about it, the Commanders cleaning house from beginning to end. And we'll see what the future holds for them. But very much expected. When a new owner comes in, he wants to put his own footprint on the team. Okay, now in the National Football League, the Pittsburgh Steelers get a win. They get into the playoffs. But the question is, will they have T.J. Watt around for the game in Buffalo? He has a grade 2 MCL sprain, and naturally, this was an injury that occurred over the weekend, so we'll see if he can play this coming week. If not, of course, the Steelers are already up against it, having to go to Buffalo. The Green Bay Packers, in a great game from Jordan Love, ended up winning at Lambeau Field, unlike last year with Aaron Rodgers, and they beat the Chicago Bears, and they clinched a playoff spot. Maybe the story of the day was on the opposite end of the Jacksonville Jaguars, where they were a win-and-get-in situation, and they couldn't beat the Tennessee Titans on the road. Derrick Henry went nuts, said goodbye to everybody after the game. Jaguars are out, and we'll see where the Tennessee Titans go from here. Lots of talk about what Mike Vrabel may do at the end of the season as well. And in case you missed it last night, the Buffalo Bills did visit South Florida, down 14-7, got a huge punt return, and ended up overcoming a lot of turnovers and clinched the division. They win for the 4th straight year, the AFC East. Okay, in college football, we've got some news to get to ahead of tonight's college football championship game. By the way, going into tonight's game, we'll get to that in just a sec. Let's go through the headlines, and we'll show you the updated odds. But South Dakota State has repeated as FCS champs. This was sort of under the radar, but congratulations to them. It happened yesterday. Zach Lujan is set to be Northwestern's new offensive coordinator. Lujan, his last name, excuse me. He won the FCS title yesterday, so he's headed there. Malik Neighbors declares for the NFL draft. He was LSU's great wide receiver, over 1,500 receiving yards this past season. And ex-USC quarterback Malachi Nelson is indeed transferring. He is going to Boise State for the upcoming college football season. Believe it or not, it'll be in like 6 months from now. Now, as I mentioned, Very big difference, by the way, in terms of the odds tonight. I noticed this on DraftKings and FanDuel. For those of you who are on FanDuel and you want to take the underdog, then this is your spot, because right now Washington is 5.5-point underdogs on FanDuel, while on DraftKings the line is 4.5. You see the line 4.5 here. I've seen a lot of variance going back and forth, so it seems like money's coming in on both sides here. Total of 55.5. We have this game covered for you on In-Game Live tonight. Draymond Green has been reinstated in the NBA on Saturday, so the Golden State Warriors have him back. Chris Paul, unfortunately for him, he's going to be out 4 to 6 weeks with a left hand fracture. The Knicks have waived Taj Gibson, 38 years old, trying to make the team after a late career comeback. And how about this story? Texas Tech's Pop Isaacs, he has 21 points against Texas after being named in a lawsuit from an issue that happened with him allegedly in the Bahamas as they had a tournament there earlier in the season. Okay, we had some hot stove news in Major League Baseball. Actually had a signing yesterday. It's the same team again. It's the Los Angeles Dodgers signing a player, deferring the money. They did it again. Teoscar Hernandez, former outfielder, DH, of course, for Seattle and previous to that Toronto, and came over in a deal with the Astros once upon a time. Hernandez, $23.5 million and several millions deferred, like Shohei Ohtani as well. Not sure how this keeps going on in baseball, but the Dodgers like deferring, and they did it again here. Sean Manaea and the New York Mets have reportedly agreed to a 2-year, $28 million contract. So the Mets, after trading away Scherzer and Verlander, have somebody else to be in the middle of that rotation going in next year. A judge has ordered a conditional release of Wander Franco while they are investigating, of course, his situation in the Dominican Republic. And a trade also late over the weekend, the Giants have acquired Robbie Ray, who's going to miss a portion of the season with an injury, from the Seattle Mariners. Mitch Haniger, Anthony DeSclafani are headed back to Seattle along with cash considerations. So that is the full details there. For those of you who are getting ready for tonight's game and you're like, well, what are the odds on FanDuel and DraftKings? Well, we have all the odds posted for you. Just go to the SportsGrid app. You can download it. It's completely free right now. Latest odds, information on all the sports books, giving you an edge. It is the SportsGrid app, available for iOS and Android. Use it as a companion to all of your SportsGrid watching here on our network. Okay, coming up next, we got Matt Lutovsky joining us from Sporting News. We'll go over the playoff games this weekend. It is Wild Card Weekend with games on Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. We'll preview them all. And also, don't forget Warren Sharp also coming up later in the show. Talk about some of the fallout from some of the coaching firing yesterday. By the way, one other note I wanted to give to you. Some people may be wondering, you didn't mention Bill Belichick, the New England Patriots. No resolution whatsoever at this hour on Belichick. He had his press conference this morning and said he's willing to do whatever it is to make the team better. We'll be right back. Don't go away. We've got new sports books operating for licenses, and a lot of news always coming out of there. One of the fresh sports betting states.
Well, they're a little behind the ball there, so I don't know if they'll be at the starting line in North Carolina. But yeah, a really interesting mix of applicants this early on so far.
NewsWire, only on SportsGrid.
Quarterback at quarterback. We're going to lay some juice. We're going to have some dog prices, and we're going to go right in the middle.
Because I don't know what they're doing. To me, they're in a complete rebuild, Kev.
Go run, run, run. That's where overbackers on this 51.5 shot.
So right now, we saw a little bit more over money, but it's hovering right around.
The winner of this game will be the division favorite.
I don't care if they win, because all we care about is the money, baby, the money.
Pro Football Today. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
My best bet is Michael Penix Jr. over 309.5. Let's shop around. Let's get active, and let's get the best of the numbers here, Joe.
I believe if Michigan in this ball game can run the football, work off of play action, they can move the football, put up points. Does fall on McCarthy, but I like Michigan's chances in this ball game.
National championship set. Washington against Michigan.
Brothers in arms tonight. This is it.
This is the most excited I think I've ever been for a day of work in my entire life.
That tells you how good this league is. Jeff, you're mine. Big 12. Who's the team to beat?
Well, it's always Kansas. I don't care who comes in the league. And I love Kelvin Sampson, what he's done in Houston. I don't care. So Marquette, to me, is the best backcourt in the country. Tyler Kolek's the best point guard. Cam Jones is an elite scorer who just plays with such a good pace, and he's so smart.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
We spent all offseason where the NFL said, hey, just so you guys know, running backs don't matter. If we then this year give the MVP to a running back, the irony. I am disappointed that they lost to FAU because secretly I don't really like this FAU team very much. I don't know. They're just not for me. And now they've completely legitimized the Owls.
Game time decisions, only on SportsGrid.
Yay, congratulations, but the game was over at that point, so another one of those terrible beats. If you had 3.5, 4, even 4.5, this was a 10-point game until the final closing seconds.
In-game live, prime time, only on SportsGrid.
SportsGrid, the only streaming sports betting network. Tips, info, and insights to up your IQ. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Time to preview Wild Card Weekend for the first time this week. First time of probably many times here on this show. Matt Lutovsky joins us of Sporting News here on SportsGrid. Matt, Week 18 comes and goes. A lot of drama early, not so much late, and then some fun in the night game as well. I think we kind of got what we were looking for in Week 18, and I really do like a lot of the matchups going into the playoffs, some really short spreads. So I suppose we'll probably get some upsets too.
Yeah, I'm sure it's going to be. There's always something weird in Super Wild Card Weekend, as the networks have branded it. Definitely weird things happen. But I tell you what, I wish we could have bet on which game would be the Saturday 4:30 game, because the Texans being involved in that game is as automatic as anything in sports. So I was glad to see that tradition continue. Gotta respect Matt Schaub for that decision.
Yeah, I would tell you, Matt, I am a little surprised this time around, only because maybe I shouldn't have been. Maybe I read this wrong completely, but I guess I'm a little surprised that they put, to me, the best game on the board on the streaming on Peacock on Saturday night. But we'll get to that in a minute. I thought that would. I didn't think the NFL would basically give Peacock the best game, but I think they did. Anyway,
Taylor Swift sign-ups, my friend. Sorry,
must be. Yeah. I mean, other than that, I mean, there's really not a lot of excuses. So the Browns will take on the Texans. I think this line is correct. The Browns have been better than the Texans all season long. They're really the one team that we talk about going into the playoffs, Matt, that we don't really start with the quarterback. I mean, we could with Joe Flacco, but that's not why they're here. They're here because they've had the best defense in the conference, maybe the best defense in the NFL. The total is 43.5. Surprised me, at least initially. I thought it would be a little bit lower, given the fact that so many regular season games have been in the 30s. I'm thinking this probably is going to go right down to the wire. And, certainly Cleveland, if their defense plays anything like it did in the regular season, I think Houston could be in trouble here.
Yeah, I agree. I think the thing with Cleveland's defense, it is statistically the best defense in the NFL, but those home road splits are interesting. And they haven't been nearly as good on the road. Now, obviously, they just beat Houston, although it was a different Houston team than what they're going to be seeing on Saturday. But yeah, I think the line's about right. I like Cleveland by a field goal. That's about right. I think the over/under, kind of what you implied, is maybe a little high. We know things slow down in the playoffs. We have a rookie quarterback, even though he's been lights out. We have an old veteran quarterback that is somehow defying the odds to play as well as he has. I think we're all waiting for the clock to strike midnight. Maybe it won't, or at least it won't this week. But I think there's plenty of reasons to back the under there, just given all the variables involved in this game. Weird things happen in the Saturday 4:30 time slot. We've seen some ridiculous comebacks in the past and just some ridiculous games. But I don't know. I just think this one's going to play out a little more true to form, and I think we're going to competitive, low-scoring game that the Browns will kind of squeak out there at the end.
Should be a fun, close game between these two teams. CJ Stroud gets his first crack at the playoffs. So the Dolphins, Matt, halftime last night, if you're watching that game, you're thinking, all right, they're going to host, Buffalo again for the second time, and they completely fell flat in the second half. So they're going to travel to Kansas City on Saturday night, but the odds makers initially said, hey, this is still a good Dolphins team here just because they lost that game. They play, they didn't play well against Kansas City when they played overseas in the first half, then they came back. But the odds to me do tell the story here. Kansas City opened up as only a 3-point favorite. Now this has climbed to 3.5 and a total of 43.5. And if this game, by the way, Matt, was last year, the Chiefs would probably be 6.5 point favorites, but they're really hard to trust going into the season.
Yeah, they are.
So, yeah.
Yeah, no question. They're hard to trust. The offense just hasn't been there. It hasn't been consistent. We know about the wide receivers and the drops. But I tell you what, the defense is playing very well. And I talked about it last week when I was on the show ahead of the Buffalo game. Miami just doesn't beat good teams. They beat Dallas. I feel they got a little lucky with that Dallas goal line fumble, or else they would have lost that one too. And going on the road, it's supposed to be cold in Kansas City, which, is probably going to bother a team from Miami, especially given some of their skill guys. Tyreek Hill's played in those conditions before. But they have injuries. I'm guessing Raheem Mostert will be back, but we don't know for sure. It's not as if Week 18's game wasn't a big game and Jalen Waddle and Raheem Mostert weren't back. Those are key injuries, no matter how good, Tyreek Hill is, and no matter how good Devon Achane is. These are big injuries, key parts of their offense. And even if those guys are, less than 100% and they play, I just have a tough time thinking Miami's going to put it together enough to go into Kansas City and win against Patrick Mahomes, who comes alive this time of year, who always gets that 3rd and 7 where he scrambles and gets 8 yards and he reaches the ball out as he's going out of bounds. It's just what he does. It's what this team does. And I like Kansas City in this one. So I'm maybe one of the suckers who was putting in that early money on Kansas City to raise the line, because I just think that this is a tough matchup for a Dolphins team that, to me, for all the points they've scored, for all the stats, it just hasn't been that good against other high-end competition.
Yeah, if the weather is playable, I'm going to take Miami, but I got to wait on that to make that decision. Obviously they didn't want to have to go to the snow and the cold. That was not ideal. Okay, so the Packers rallied to put it together against the Chicago Bears, although the Bears had their opportunities, Matt, in that game on Sunday. They just couldn't really do anything offensively. Jordan Love made some really good throws down the stretch, but the odds makers basically have said no one is beating Dallas in Dallas at this time of the year. That's what's happened all season long. 7.5 point favorites, total of 49.5. I don't think you're going to be able to get 7. Maybe Sunday morning, or is a possibility here. But simply put, Cowboys are built to win at home. It's just when they leave AT&T in Dallas, that's when they have the issues.
Yeah, my philosophy on this is if it's a touchdown or more, I'll take the Packers here. And you're right, the Cowboys are great at home. There's no question, but they could have / should have just lost at home to a Lions team that we saw this Packers team really, I don't want to say annihilate, but they pretty much put it on the Lions in Detroit, a month and a half ago. So I think this Packers team has been overachieving all year. I think they believe they can win. These rookie receivers are really dynamic. They might be getting some of their injured receivers back too, who can make big plays. It's tough to back the Packers to win. There's no question about that, because they have some problems on the back end of their pass defense, and we know that's where Dallas thrives. But a touchdown, that's a lot of points for a talented team that clearly thinks it can win. And sometimes that irrational confidence is just what you need in the playoffs.
All right, finally, it's the homecoming game for Matthew Stafford. Rams at the Lions. Lions, 3-point favorites. Rams have played really good football the last 2 months, total 51.5. Boy, if there was ever a game that I saw that I get my coin out to flip, I think this would be the one, Matt. I don't know, man. Feels like a great game on tap for Monday night.
Yeah, it's going to be a great game. And look, when Kieran Williams and Cooper Kupp play for the Rams, they're averaging 28.5 points a game. This offense is, to me, very underrated. People don't quite realize how good they are when they have all their pieces. And Detroit's biggest deficiency is their pass defense. So to me, this one. It's a great story with Detroit. You want to root for Detroit in that home game. I look at this more as a Jared Goff revenge game than the Matthew Stafford homecoming game, but that's just me. But either way, I think Detroit's going to have a real tough time slowing down this Rams offense. And I'm all over the Rams in this game. I hate saying that because I want Detroit to win just to keep up that great story. But we know they have some issues, and Jared Goff is prone to some big turnovers and big spots. Way better at home. He's got those home road splits where he's way better at home, indoors especially. But man, I just like the Rams here. They got the play calling, they got the experience, they got the quarterback and the poise. And like I said, when all their guys are healthy, that offense is lethal. And I think they'll be able to get it done in Detroit.
All right. Well, we'll find out this weekend, Matt. Get off to a great start. End the week with a bunch of football games. That's the way we like to do it. Thanks again for coming on.
All right. No problem. Thank you.
Matthew Waters joins us next. North Carolina, we've got new sports books operating for licenses, and a lot of news always coming out of there. One of the fresh sports betting states.
Well, they're a little behind the ball there, so I don't know if they'll be at the starting line in North Carolina. But yeah, a really interesting mix of applicants this early on so far.
NewsWire, only on SportsGrid.
Quarterback at quarterback. We're going to lay some juice. We're going to have some dog prices, and we're going to go right in the middle.
Because I don't know what they're doing. To me, they're in a complete rebuild, Kev.
Go run, run, run. That's where overbackers on this 51.5 shot.
So right now, we saw a little bit more over money, but it's hovering right around.
The winner of this game will be the division
I don't care if they win because all we care about is the money, baby, the money.
Pro Football Today. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
My best bet is Michael Penix to over 309.5. Let's shop around. Let's get active, and let's get the best of the numbers here. So
I believe if Michigan in this ball game can run the football, work off of play action, they can move the football, put up points. Does fall on McCarthy, but I like Michigan's chances in this ball game.
National championship set. Washington against Michigan.
Brothers in arms tonight. This is it.
This is the most excited I think I've ever been for a day of work in my entire life.
That tells you how good this league is. Jeff, you're mine. Big 12. Who's the team to beat?
Well, it's always Kansas. I don't care who comes in the league. And I love Kelvin Sampson, what he's done at Houston. I don't care. So Marquette, to me, is the best backcourt in the country. Tyler Kolek's the best point guard. Cam Jones is an elite scorer who just plays with such a good pace, and he's so smart.
Betting above the rim. Only on SportsGrid.
We spent all offseason where the NFL said, hey, just so you guys know, running backs don't matter. If we then this year give the MVP to a running back, the irony. I am disappointed that they lost to FAU because secretly I don't really like this FAU team very much. I don't know. They're just not for me. And now they've completely legitimized the Owls.
Game time decisions. Only on SportsGrid.
Yay, congratulations, but the game was over at that point, so another one of those terrible beats. If you had 3.5, 4, even 4.5, this was a 10-point game until the final closing seconds.
In-game live, prime time. Only on SportsGrid.
SportsGrid, the only streaming sports betting network. Tips, info, and insights to up your IQ. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
All right, so Monday, so we got Matthew Waters with us from Legal Sports Report to go over the very latest on the landscape of sports betting. A lot of United States sports betting stories for you today to analyze. Let's get started. Matthew, thank you again for coming on NewsWire. Hope your Monday's off to a better start than, let's be honest, your Eagles. Oof, my gosh. I'm stunned. I thought the Eagles were just going to be okay and turn it around, and now they're up against it a bit.
Yeah, I could have broken my leg getting out of bed this morning, and I'd still be in better shape than the Eagles. So what are you going to do?
Yeah, tough one. All right, so a lot of fun, I think, for people who may not have, let's say the money to invest on single games. Sometimes they put in what's called futures odds. I'm sure most people who are watching are familiar with that, where you put a bet in at the beginning of the season and then you cash in at the end. Season win totals, futures, etc. It's a lot of fun to do because you could kind of, place a season-long bet all at once and just wait it out. I've always found that interesting, but New York is one state where it's a little bit unclear as to what the future will hold with that. Why is that?
Yeah, New York is weird, right? I mean, we celebrated New York for finally legalizing the mobile sports betting and everything like that. But the truth is, to get sports betting up and running in New York, it was a bit of a lift because their constitution is really specific about not just sports betting, but also gaming in general. And so in New York, actually right now, you cannot bet on basically anything that requires a vote. So you're talking about an MVP award, a Cy Young, Rookie of the Year, anything where people at the end of the year have to vote on giving this award to a player. You can't do that in New York right now. And last year, an attempt to get this passed, it just didn't gain any traction. And, look, when you're guys like Senator Joe Adabo, who was going for sports betting for so long, trying to get it, and then gets it, he's looking at different things now, right? They're looking at casinos, they're looking at potentially iGaming, and futures bets on these kind of wagers, they just don't bring in that much money in the grand scheme of things. So what we're looking at, though, is we're looking at potentially a bill that could change this, but I mentioned the Constitution, and here's one part of what the New York State Constitution says about sports wagering. It's defined as wagering on sporting events or any portion thereof, or on the individual performance statistics of athletes participating in an event or a combination of sporting events. That, to me, does not read that kind of bet based on voting at MVP Cy Young again is going to be included in that. So basically, Senator Adabo is going to have his legal team poring over this and trying to find an argument that can make it work. If they can't, then just to be able to bet on these kind of things in the future, you're going to need a change to the state constitution, and that takes about 3 years in New York. So it's pretty wild when you think about, we celebrated that New Yorkers don't have to cross the bridge anymore to Jersey to get their bet. They have legal mobile sports books that they can access from the comfort of their homes, and yet still something as seemingly silly as being able to place a bet on the best pitcher in baseball. You can't do it. So it's not like New York is losing tons of dollars to New Jersey as people are flocking over the bridges to bet on MVPs and everything. But yeah, it is just like a weird blip to not be able to offer that stuff. And the fact that they may have to go through a constitutional change over multiple years for it is something we haven't seen in other states. It's really a unique situation for New York, but we are keeping an eye on that. But like I said, when it comes down to trying to get tax revenue, casinos near New York City way more tax revenue than any of these vote future bets could ever bring. So, and iGaming as well. So there are better things to be spending the time on right now, but it is not completely on the back burner. It's not lost completely, and we'll see where it goes from here.
All right. Well, the other part of this is, with all of these companies kind of flying in and out the daily fantasy space and also sports betting space, every once in a while we get a story like this that we kind of take a closer look at. And this one surrounds, Matthew, a company called Thrive Fantasy. Now, I'm familiar with them. and did a big ad campaign last year. So I'm certainly familiar with their work and sort of how you play the games there. In fact, I played on their site last year. Apparently some issue with payouts, which, honestly is the one thing you never want to hear when it comes to any of these operators.
Yeah, so let's be clear. First of all, we've heard from a lot of customers of Thrive Fantasy who have not gotten their money back yet. They've requested these withdrawals, and it's taking people a long time to get their money, or they still haven't gotten their money. Now, to be clear, we have heard that Thrive Fantasy has gotten a new payment processor, and they already had a reputation for being slow with payouts in general. So let's get that out there and just say that we aren't able to confirm that anything nefarious is necessarily happening at Thrive Fantasy. But, you mentioned we hear stories like this before. No House Advantage just had a situation like this where they shut down. And it turns out that, the money just wasn't always in the right place. And people had to go through a lengthy process of getting their money back. And, right now we have more than a few people that are trying to get 5-digit withdrawals out of their Thrive Fantasy accounts, and they're just not able to do it. They're not getting any responses. If you go on X, we have a couple of linked in the story of just lists of people that have not gotten their money back. We've spoken to a couple people who didn't want to, obviously share all their information with us. But one gentleman in North Carolina, he wrote to the Attorney General, and the Attorney General has written to Thrive Fantasy, and they have not heard back yet from Thrive Fantasy. This is one of those stories that really gives you a headache when you're in this industry, Craig, because, first of all, whenever anybody loses, especially if there's like a questionable call, right? They're screaming that everything is rigged, this is rigged, that's rigged, whatever.
Right.
So you already have that flying around, even when everything is on the up and perfect. Then when you have situations like this, it's just such a stain on the fantasy sports and the sports betting industries that, you have people start to worry about even the sites that are legit, because plenty of us think that Thrive Fantasy was legit. And again, we just don't know what exactly is happening here. But when you look at some of these amounts, there's one person added up 16 people that they're trying to get back $350,000 total, and none of them have had any contact. So now maybe you're saying to yourself, well, why do you have 5 figures in a fantasy account? Well, first of all, some people bet enough to win 5 figures on one day. That could just be a one weekend's winnings, if you will. But it does make you start to think, if you have, some money sitting in an account, you're like, well, I'm never going to bet all that. Maybe I should get some of that out and be safe. And, that's not what the gambling companies want you to do, right? If you have money in with them, they want you to keep that and spend it with them. They don't want you to take that out and potentially lose that share of your wallet. So whenever something like this comes around, it's a headache for the industry at the very least, and at the worst, it really is quite the blemish. But you can just you can go through X and look for Thrive Fantasy, and there are plenty of people that are upset right now. And it's interesting because just 3 months ago, the CEO that we have reached out to the CEO, we have not heard back from him. But on LinkedIn, he wrote that they were looking to expand internationally. We are ready to move forward with our international expansion, white label offerings. We need help with localization, Spanish, Hindi, and Mandarin. Those are big projects. And 3 months later, people can't get their money out. It's really a confusing situation right now, but one that we're definitely tracking at LSR.
Yeah, this will be a big one for this year, if indeed anything, as you said, nefarious is happening. But again, we don't know quite yet. Okay, let's end with this. A acquisition potentially here of 2024 in the sports betting industry. Let's break it down for our viewers and listeners very quickly. We got less than 2 minutes. Who is it, and what could be involved here?
Well, Craig, this is Blue Bet. They are a company out of Australia. They operate as Clutch Bet in the United States. They're only in a couple of markets. They're in Colorado and Iowa right now, and they haven't really done a whole lot just yet. Another Australian company. Now, get this. There is a sports book in Australia already named Better. This is not the Jake Paul affiliated Better that's in the U.S. Different company completely, but the Australian Better is looking into buying Blue Bet. And Blue Bet confirmed that those talks are ongoing, as they are, always ongoing to create value for shareholders, as they say. But it's just another one of the situations where we're looking at the smaller operators in the U.S. starting to get eaten up, starting to disappear. And you have to wonder by the end of 2024, how many of these little guys could we lose? So it's early in the year, but we already have one that could potentially, now Better could keep them in the U.S., but remember the Australian Better, they don't have anything going on in the U.S. right now. So we'll keep an eye on that too, Craig.
All right. Well, Matthew, thanks again for weighing in on some news stories. Appreciate it. We'll talk again soon.
All right. Thanks, sir.
All right. Matthew Waters from Legal Sports Report. Coming up next, we've got a championship preview with Ben Stevens, and Warren Sharp has his Sharp football analysis all set to go next. Don't go away. We've got new sports books operating for licenses, and a lot of news always coming out of there. One of the fresh sports betting states.
Well, they're a little behind the ball there, so I don't know if they'll be at the starting line in North Carolina. But yeah, a really interesting mix of applicants this early on so far.
NewsWire, only on SportsGrid.
Quarterback at quarterback. We're going to lay some juice. We're going to have some dog prices, and we're going to go right in the middle.
Because I don't know what they're doing. To me, they're in a complete rebuild, Kev.
Go run. That's where overbackers on this 51.5 shot.
So right now, we saw a little bit more over money, but it's hovering right around.
The winner of this game will be the division
I
favorite.
don't care if they win, because all we care about is the money, baby, the money.
Pro Football Today. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
My best bet is Michael Penix Jr. over 309.5. Touchdown from out. Let's get active and let's get the best of the numbers here. So
I believe if Michigan in this ball game can run the football, work off of play action, they can move the football, put up points. Does fall on McCarthy, but I like Michigan's chances in this ball game.
National championship is set. Washington against Michigan.
Brothers in arms tonight. This is it.
This is the most excited I think I've ever been for a day of work in my entire life.
That tells you how good this league is. Jeff, your mind. Big 12. Who's the team to beat?
Well, it's always Kansas. I don't care who comes in the league. And I love Kelvin Sampson, what he's done at Houston. I don't care. So Marquette, to me, is the best backcourt in the country. Tyler Kolek's the best point guard. Cam Jones is an elite scorer who just plays with such a good pace, and he's so smart.
Betting above the rim. Only on SportsGrid.
We spent all offseason where the NFL said, hey, just so you guys know, running backs don't matter. If we then this year give the MVP to a running back, the irony. I am disappointed that they lost to FAU because secretly I don't really like this FAU team very much. I don't know. They're just not for me. And now they've completely legitimized the Owls.
Game time decisions. Only on SportsGrid.
Yay, congratulations, but the game was over at that point, so another one of those terrible beats. If you had 3.5, 4, even 4.5, this was a 10-point game until the final closing seconds.
In-game live, prime time. Only on SportsGrid.
SportsGrid, the only streaming sports betting network. Tips, info, and insights to up your IQ. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
All right, welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. At the top of the show, we actually had a little bit of a piece of breaking news. We'll give it to you now. We've had a lot to get to here on the show, but Tiger Woods on his social media account says that he and Nike are parting ways after being together for 27 years. So the end of Tiger Woods wearing Nike. Didn't think that we'd ever see that day, but here we are in 2024. So that's the very latest from Tiger Woods. Okay, now let's check in on tonight's national championship game. Of course, Michigan taking on Washington in the last version of the 4-team college football playoff. Our Ben Stevens has a preview.
Craig, tonight in Houston, it's the final college football game of the 2023 season. A matchup of 1 versus 2. Two perfect teams, both at 14-0, entering tonight's national championship game in the hunt for that title. It's number 1 Michigan, and it's number 2 Washington. Craig, let's take a look at the odds right now, where things stand for tonight's matchup in H-Town. The Wolverines have been booked as a favorite in all 14 games. Make that a perfect 15 for 15 tonight. A 4.5-point spread in favor of the Maize and Blue. Craig, here you'll see the money line as well. Minus 185 for the Wolverines, plus 155 for Washington. When the Huskies were up by double digits in the Sugar Bowl against Texas, it was Washington at a 2-1 number. And the hypothetical look-ahead line to this game was Michigan favored by a full touchdown at 7 in favor of the Maize and Blue against these Washington Huskies. The total for this football game opened up at 54.5, now slightly on the rise at 55 and a hook. Craig, it's interesting when you look at the total. It sets the precedent for tonight. This will be Michigan's 5th game all year long with a total in the 50s. It will be their highest total since week number 2 of the regular season, a non-conference matchup against UNLV. This will be a game for Washington, just the 5th this year, that is under the number of 60 in the previous 4 in the regular season. When the Huskies played with a total sub 60, they went over in 3 of those 4 games. And both teams, Craig, very comfortable where they are according to the spread. Washington as an underdog 5 times in the last 2 years under Kalen DeBoer, including in the Pac-12 championship game and in the Sugar Bowl matchup against Texas. The Huskies have won outright all 5 games, booked as a dog since the start of 2022. Michigan this year, 8-5-1 against the spread, booked as the favored side. Craig, they've been booked as a favorite 38 times now in this 3-year run that has ended in the college football playoff each and every season. 36-2 straight up. A quarterback comparison, of course, between J.J. McCarthy and Michael Penix Jr. entering tonight's game in Houston. Michael Penix Jr., the nation's leading passer, threw for 430 yards against the Longhorns in the college football playoff semifinal, the 3rd highest total in any CFP game in the decade-long history of this format to crown a national champion. J.J. McCarthy entered the Rose Bowl against Alabama, Craig, throwing for less than 150 yards with only a touchdown and an interception in the 4 games entering that matchup against the Crimson Tide. Well, against Alabama, 221 through the air and 2 touchdowns for McCarthy. His passing yards prop against a bottom 15 Washington pass defense is at 199.5 tonight. It's up there for Michael Penix Jr., 292.5 against the best defense in college football. That's the Michigan Wolverines. A national champion will be crowned, Craig, on this Monday night to end out 2023's college football campaign. In Houston, it's number 1 Michigan. It's number 2 Washington.
All right, thanks very much, Ben. Can't wait for that game tonight. And naturally, after that, we've got the NFL playoffs. Of course, no one can preview it like our guy. It's time now for the Sharp Report. All right, Warren, here we go. NFL playoffs, all the matchups are set. Super Wild Card weekend is upon us. And before we go forward, I guess we'll take a little bit of a look back as to what happened yesterday. And thanks again for being on the program today. Hope you had a nice weekend.
Had a good weekend. Really looking forward to these playoff matchups. Really love the diversity here. We've got some dome games. We've got some games that are going to be outdoors in the elements. As a viewer, we're going to have some fun games to watch. And I think there's a lot of storylines in many of these games that are going to be fun to discuss all week. So it's really a pleasure to get this type of slate, and I'm looking forward to it.
All right, well, let's start with last night's game. I mean, this was a great win for the Bills, who yet again, Warren, don't play well. Like, they did not play well, and they ended up winning. I am stunned that the Dolphins couldn't pull this off after being up 14-7 in this game and forcing all those turnovers with Josh Allen. But they left that door open. That special teams touchdown just changed the game completely. And then Miami's offense just went completely cold in the second half. And now Miami is up against it, having to go to Kansas City, which, by the way, I think they have a shot at Kansas City. I'm not going to rule that out. But this is not where they wanted to be.
No, they do have a shot. I think a lot of the teams this weekend do have shots just because of the way some of the teams that are the favorites tend to play offensively. And some of these teams that are favored, all of them have struggled. There's not a single team, I believe, that's favored this weekend that has not let us down at some points in the season offensively in one way or another. And that's going to allow a lot of these teams that are underdogs to still have a shot. But there's no excuse for the way that Miami played with the number of turnovers that Josh Allen gave them for them to come out with that type of performance. And it's hard not to pinpoint it on Tua primarily and say, what is this offense doing here? There's constantly, they are forcing the ball 10 to 15 to 20 plus yards down the field when there are guys running underneath against this Bills team. There were plenty of times that they could have targeted the running backs where they weren't targeting the running backs. I just did not understand the game plan. I did not understand the way that Tua was utilizing his eyes to work the ball to shorter routes that were open here against the Bills defense that was playing aggressive, but Tua was having time. And then last but not least, you've got a guy this is why I know Mike McDaniel thought that he was maybe being clever by going out and signing Chase Claypool, right? All the teams that have had Chase Claypool have got on him about his effort, about his ability and his desire to play, his commitment to excellence and to performance, and they got rid of him. Mike McDaniel goes out thinking that he's the smartest kid in class to go and bring Chase Claypool in there when is Chase Claypool really the guy that you need? No. But what ends up happening when you do something like that and you introduce somebody who's not given the effort, not trying to run the perfect routes, and then you sustain injuries, ultimately there's going to come a time potentially where you have to actually put him out on the field. And in the most important play of their entire season, they put him out there on the field, and then they threw him the pass in double coverage. His route was sloppy. I don't love the decision by Tua to throw into that coverage and to target Chase Claypool. But guess what? For whatever reason he did, Chase doesn't come close to getting that ball. The ball is intercepted, and there goes the shot at winning the AFC East and at hosting a playoff game. Now they have to go into frigid Kansas City.
Yeah, look, the Dolphins are up against it, but I've seen the Chiefs play all season long, and like the Bills, like I sort of lean toward wanting to take the points in that game. But I'm going to wait on the weather, as I said earlier, Warren. Miami is not going to perform in snow, but I want to see how that pans out. Let's move ahead to the Texans and Colts game from Saturday. And look, everyone is just looking at that last play of the game where Steichen brought in the running back Goodson and he dropped the ball. It was not a great throw. But look, a lot leads up to that point before we actually get there. Houston qualifies for the playoffs. Great draft in C.J. Stroud that gets them there. The way I look at the Colts, though, Warren, to be honest with you, like I'm pretty thrilled with the season that they had. Like all things considered, I didn't think they would even be in that shot to win.
Yeah, all things being considered, completely agree with you. It was a good season for the Colts, given what was thrown up against them. And obviously, it was a great season for the Houston Texans to make the playoffs in C.J. Stroud's first year. But that was a de facto playoff game. And I got to tell you, I was extraordinarily disappointed in the play calling of Bobby Slowick in that game. If you consider the fact that they had that come out the gates, one play shot that was excellent, well-designed, well-schemed, well-called, apart from that play, I was very disappointed in the way that the Houston Texans called this game offensively. They're going up against a defense that you clearly need to pass the ball against. You're very successful against cover 3. The Colts don't bring pressure. And yet, here's the numbers. 15 running back runs on early downs, only 10 quarterback passes. The 15 running back runs gained only 45 yards. That's 3 yards a carry and 20% success, whereas the passes were gaining 12.8 yards per attempt with 46% success. Night and day different. Why they continue to run the ball, it almost cost them the game. And then I start looking forward here to a team like the Cleveland Browns. And now the Texans are going up against the Browns. And if we flip the page to that game, Craig, they're going up against a defense now that doesn't play the highest rates of cover 3 in the NFL. They actually play the highest rates of man. And what we talked about leading into the game was CJ Stroud has massive splits, zone versus man, specifically dominates against cover 3. And now he's going up against man. He is significantly worse against man. Then we're also talking about the pressure. And why we liked them last week was because they don't get a lot of pressure. And now we're going up against the Colts don't get a lot of pressure. Now he's going up against a team in the Cleveland Browns that get pressure at a top 5 rate in the NFL. I mean, it's going to be night and day different. Now is going to be the time where you're going to need to get something more out of the ground game. This is not the time that you're going to be able to utilize CJ Stroud. I don't know why they weren't leaning into that more last week, but this matchup in general concerns me for Stroud and gives me overall concern with the play calling of Bobby Slowick in general, because I don't know that he's to be trusted in this spot. And you're going up against a quarterback who look, there's a lot of belief. First-year quarterback, first year starting in the postseason. The results don't tend to fare well against veteran experience on the other side, and that's exactly what the Houston Texans are dealing with here. So they're going to need either superhuman performance out of CJ Stroud or superhuman game planning and play calling out of Bobby Slowick. And I don't know that I trust the second one, and the first one's going to be hard to come by because of the matchup and the defense that he's going up against.
Yeah, I think, look, I'm reading Cleveland on that game, but again, still time to go before we have to take a position. Real quick, let's get to the coaching changes today. I anticipate this afternoon there'll be a lot more. I don't think we need to spend a lot of time on Ron Rivera. I mean, a new owner comes in. I don't even think it mattered who the coach was going to be. He's going to get let go. Carolina, they axed their GM, made a bad trade. Arthur Smith, let's focus on that as we end, Warren. Just 3 bad years from Arthur Smith, had a lot of success with Tennessee, was given some nice offensive weapons, didn't have necessarily a quarterback there, but the Falcons' job should be a coveted one, I would think, Warren. I mean, there's some nice pieces in place. If they can sign a couple of defensive free agents, add a quarterback, this should be a playoff-built team.
Yeah, they don't have massive commitments contractually to players that they couldn't really move on from. And so I think there are some upsides and opportunities. Plus, you look at this division. I mean, Tampa Bay Buccaneers with a banged-up Baker Mayfield just won the division, right? You've got the Saints with Derek Carr, who's not long for the NFL either. And this division is a great spot to come and land. You just got to get a quarterback. And that's something that Arthur Smith really didn't have in any of his years that he was there as head coach. So that was unfortunate for him. But this team consistently let him down, and some of his play calling let them down. Some of his comments let him down. And just the way that game ended yesterday, I think the writing was on the wall potentially before that, but certainly the way that one finished, they moved on from him. So great opportunity for somebody else to come into Atlanta, but the key is you've got to find that quarterback, and they have not had success in doing that since Matt Ryan left town.
20 seconds left. Is there any game on the board at all that you took any position on early when the lines came out last night?
Just look at the wind in Buffalo. That's all I can say. The wind is horrendous. The forecast is like 45 mile per hour gusts, 25 mile per hour sustained. That stadium is terrible with allowing wind into it. It's going to be a problem for those offenses.
All right, thanks, Warren. We'll catch up Friday. We'll be right back. We've got new sports books operating for licenses, and a lot of news always coming out of there. One of the fresh sports betting states.
Well, they're a little behind the ball there, so I don't know if they'll be at the starting line in North Carolina. But yeah, a really interesting mix of applicants this early on so far.
NewsWire, only on SportsGrid.
Quarterback at quarterback. We're going to lay some juice. We're going to have some dog prices, and we're going to go right in the middle.
Because I don't know what they're doing. To me, they're in a complete rebuild, Kev.
Go run. That's where overbackers on this 51.5 shot.
Right now, he's all a little bit more over money, but it's hovering right around.
The winner of this game will be the division
I
favorite.
don't care if they win, because all we care about is the money, baby, the money.
Pro Football Today. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
My best bet is Michael Penix Jr. over 309 and a half.
Let's shop around. Let's get active and let's get the best of the number here. So
I believe if Michigan in this ball game can run the football, work off of play action, they can move the football, put up points. Does fall on McCarthy, but I like Michigan's chances in this ball game.
National championship is set. Washington against Michigan.
Brothers in arms tonight. This is it.
This is the most excited I think I've ever been for a day of work in my entire life.
That tells you how good this league is. Jeff, your mind. Big 12. Who's the team to beat?
Well, it's always Kansas. I don't care who comes in the league. And I love Kelvin Sampson, what he's done at Houston. I don't care. So Marquette, to me, is the best backcourt in the country. Tyler Kolek's the best point guard. Cam Jones is an elite scorer who just plays with such a good pace, and he's so smart.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
we spent all offseason where the NFL said, hey, just so you guys know, running backs don't matter. If we then this year give the MVP to a running back, the irony. I am disappointed that they lost to FAU because secretly I don't really like this FAU team very much. I don't know. They're just not for me. And now they've completely legitimized the Owls.
Game time decisions only on SportsGrid.
Yay, congratulations, but the game was over at that point, so another one of those terrible beats. If you had 3.5, 4, even 4.5, this was a 10-point game until the final closing seconds.
In-game live, prime time, only on SportsGrid.
SportsGrid, the only streaming sports betting network. Tips, info, and insights to up your IQ. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire. One of the other stories that percolated from yesterday's game was the New Orleans Saints, instead of taking a knee in victory formation, handing the ball off to Jamal Williams, who scored a touchdown. And naturally, the former head coach of the Atlanta Falcons, Arthur Smith, not too happy about that. Jameis Winston was in the game at quarterback for the Saints, and he told Fox 8 New Orleans this is why they did it.
But I also explained to DA that it was a team decision, and I think when you have a team morale, and I asked the guys, I said, guys, like, what do you want to do? We know how much Jamal means to this team, and I understood from DA's perspective, so I give him that. But DA didn't condone that at all. You know, he didn't. However, we decided as a team to do it, and man, we got an interception to the 1 yard line. You know, like, so if we would have scored, would it still would have been disrespectful? I think it should be forgotten, especially when the score is already 41-17. So I don't know how much worse it can get. But I got a ton of respect for Arthur Smith and the coach that he is. I think they do some incredible things. I didn't want to disrespect him. That was not my intention. My intention was to lead the team that I've been with the entire year. And we made a collective decision that we wanted to get one of our guys who they fight with blood, sweat, and tears every game in the end zone. And I'm going to feel good about that.
Jameis Winston, a great interview. Don't know if he's right or wrong in this situation. I guess time will tell if he returns to the New Orleans Saints or not. But the bottom line is, in sports, rubbing it in may be wrong, but in the end, you just kind of have to stop the other team on defense, right? Like, isn't that the name of the game? Is it going to sit right with them in the future? Who knows? Arthur Smith's not even going to be the head coach there anymore. But I certainly understand both sides in the moment. But what I do know is Jameis Winston, when it's all said and done, should host his own show or do a podcast of some kind, because guy is always funny. All right, that'll do it for the show. Thanks again to Warren Sharp for coming on the program, Matthew Waters, Matt Lutovsky, our producer Sam. I'm Craig Mish. I hope you enjoy the rest of your Monday. Don't forget, we got full coverage tonight of the College Football Championship game for Out coming up 3 o'clock Eastern. Have a great day.